to Match of the Day 2 Extra here on BBC 2 5 Live, the BBC Sport website and app, and the iPlayer as well. Joining me this lunchtime, this man to my right, to the Leicester assistant manager Michael Appleton, Jodian Lescott, who's won 2 Premier League titles with Manchester City, and Miguel Delaney, who's the chief football writer at The Independent. As always, we want you to get in touch. Use the hashtag BBC Football. You can text us as well. Get involved. 85058. Here's what we've got coming up for you this lunchtime. The big news today: Watford have sacked manager Marco Silva and blamed an unwarranted approach from a Premier League rival. It's on. Only the medicals to wait for Alexis Sanchez and Henrik Mkhitaryan ahead of their transfers between Arsenal and Manchester United. Normal service resumed for Manchester City thanks to Sergio's hat-trick. And the perfect start for Paul Lambert as Stoke get their first win since Christmas to move out of the bottom 3. In terms of the papers, the Sunday Times says who needs Sanchez? Also, Spurs fight Real over world record bid for Kane. The Spanish side apparently ready to offer £200 million. The Sunday Mirror say heir of the Pog, saying that Paul Pogba could demand to double his wages to match Sanchez. And the Sunday Express, here we go. Arsenal can sign the Borussia Dortmund striker Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang if they pay £55 million. We will start, though, with the big news that we mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, that Watford has sacked manager Marco Silva. I'm just going to bring you this statement which came out in the last hour or so. It reads that it's been a difficult decision, one not taken lightly. The club is convinced that the appointment of Silva was the right one, and it's had it not been for an unwarranted approach from a Premier League rival for his services, we would have continued to prosper under his leadership. This Watford statement goes on to read, the catalyst for the decision is that the unwarranted approach, something which the board believes has been a significant deterioration in both focus and results, to the point where the long-term future of Watford has been jeopardised. For the security and success of this football club, the board believes that it had to make the change. Let's speak to our senior football reporter, Ian Dennis, who's got more on this story. Ian, what's been going on behind the scenes at Watford for this to happen, for it to get to this point?
Well, that approach from Everton, Will, I think was mid-November, and I don't think it's been right since Watford turned down the £8.5 million since then. I don't think it went unnoticed with the hierarchy, that he actually never killed it. You compare his stance to, say, Sean Dyche when he's been linked with jobs, and Sean would come out with a line that he's fully focused, he's concentrating on the job. Silva actually never did that, and I think the owners believe he's lost focus. They've seen the spirits ebb away from inside the club. Admittedly, there has been a crippling injury list that hasn't actually helped Silva, but I also believe he's been quite stubborn from a tactical point of view. I mean, I met him pre-season and he said he wanted to play with one up front and get the wide players providing the pace. And those that watch Watford on a regular basis tell me that those tactics were fine when the players were fresh. But at this stage of the season, they're not as fresh, and maybe they're required to change things to go 2 up front. That hasn't happened. And I've been saying for a while that Watford are a club on the slide, and perception is everything, because last year people would say Matsari was struggling, and Marco Silva, who did make a good start, everything's fine. Well, actually, if you look at it, the hard facts are that Watford Football Club are actually 4 points worse off than they were at this same stage last season.
And Ian, the inevitable question, who next, or is it too early for that one?
Well, they're looking for a 10th manager to work under the Pozzo family since 2012, and I think Watford take a lot of flack for the hiring and firing and the chopping and changing of managers. But the one thing I can tell you is that there is no instability in the boardroom. There is a clear focus, and Watford have a track record of acting swiftly. And I believe they have a manager lined up. I'm expecting them to make an appointment in a matter of days. The bookies' favourite is the Malaga coach, Jose Manuel Gonzalez Lopez. But I understand that Watford are looking elsewhere, and I'm still trying to find out who that individual is. But it will happen in days, and I would expect him to be in charge for the Southampton FA Cup tie next weekend.
Thanks, Dano. That's our senior football reporter, Ian Dennis. And we've got this man to blame, Michael Appleton. He stuck the sword, the final sword, into Marco Silva's side.
Oh, no, don't do that to me. No. I'm a little surprised, if I'm being honest. I think yesterday the result was obviously a good one from our point of view. I think the game was sort of much tougher then you probably suggest if someone you felt was under pressure, or a team were under pressure. They certainly didn't play yesterday like a team that weren't playing for the manager, I can assure you of that.
It's a remarkable turnaround as well, given this is a manager who, I remember hearing earlier in the season that Manchester United were looking at him in the long term. They're impressed with what he's done. Chelsea had an eye on him, and yet he's gone from that and everyone talking about how good his coaching was to now, in the space of 7 months, a relegation and a sacking, which is incredible. And I mean, some of this I do wonder is almost a consequence of Watford being what they are as a club. I mean, they're almost kind of this transitory club now, in which so many players come through and leave within a year. They've had so much changeover with managers. And I remember hearing in the summer, one of the reasons they appointed Sanchez was to kind of improve. Silva was to improve.
The list is so long.
Well, Sanchez shows as well what's been on my mind. But one of the reasons they appointed Silva was to improve profile, that issue of perception that you brought up. And to a degree, that means when someone like Everton's going to come in for your manager, it will foster the situation that you're seen as a stepping stone. But I do wonder whether that led to kind of the spell being broken between him and the players, given how good results were before. And I wonder how you feel about that.
Yeah, as I said, there was a lot of plaudits and praise for him at the start of the season, but as the season's gone on and the comparisons to and the links to Everton came, obviously the results haven't got any better. But it's funny what their reason is to sacking him and see what they do now. Are they potentially going to derail another team and come and poach their manager? So it's all right for them to say, well, unwarranted press for Silva from Everton, but they're talking about another manager at another team.
We got sacked from Olympiacos for not wearing the club suit. He wasn't wearing his suit yesterday, was he, for the first time? He looked a little bit worn. He was wearing a tracksuit when he came up against.
Yeah, it was a little bit surprising, obviously, because you're used to seeing him, so well polished. But going back to the actual, decision and what way they've come to the decision, you don't know what sort of messages that obviously he's been relaying back to the players, within the group. I mean, obviously, he didn't come out and obviously at the time deny that there wasn't an interest, obviously, from Everton when there's approach. But, we don't know the type of conversations that were taking place between him and his players.
Yeah.
And if he was dismissing it there and then with his players, I can't see there being that much of an effect on the group. And it can go both ways. I've been in the position myself where when I've been managing a certain club and there's been interest from other clubs. Actually, it can help you.
Yeah.
Because from a confidence point of view and a belief point of view as a manager, it actually can bring the best out in you. So it'll be interesting to say who they replace him with, but in terms of obviously the approach and going back as long as what the approach happened, I'm not too convinced on that one.
Well, let's have a listen to Marco Silva, because this was his last interview as a Watford coach after defeat against Michael Appleton's Leicester yesterday. This is from Match of the Day last night.
Of course, we want to win. We want to take the enough points for us. This is the attitude and the commitment. I saw the last game, second half against Southampton again today. Is our attitude you need to put and our commitment as well. Of course, if you achieve good results, the confidence the team will be better and lift like is normal. But you need to keep going and to keep working hard. The Premier League is like this. All the games they are really, really hard to win, and you need to keep going and to work, because everybody fight to take points, and you need to do the same.
You've been getting in touch, 85058. Keep your messages coming. You can get involved on social media. Use the hashtag BBC Football. This one from Golden Pages Fan Zone on Twitter says, farewell, Marco Silva. You had the potential to be one of our greatest bosses since Graham Taylor after a terrific start to the season. Sadly, you tried to jump ship as soon as a better offer came along, and things have never been the same. This one from Matt Smith, who says, go and get Marco Silva now. Hashtag Saints. FC. Damien on Twitter says, to be honest, Marco Silva deserved the sack. Watford's drop has been mad. They were only 5 points behind Manchester United in November. Gap now is 27 points. That's insane, man, says Damien. But Miguel, in terms of Marco Silva, is there an argument to say this has damaged his stock? I mean, some might say, well, who does Marco Silva think he is? Has he thrown his toys out the pram after not getting the Everton job? 5 points from 10 Premier League games since Allardyce was appointed.
It's hard not to get the feeling that he tried to make too many jumps too quickly. Even having just come to England at a club, to be very improved their performances and the results, even if they were inevitably going to get relegated. Couldn't stop that. But that was only January. So already he's looking, I suppose, to a club that have a lot of money and perhaps, and more importantly, have a lot of history, given they won more titles than almost any club in England, in Everton. So to make that jump so quickly and to be so ready. I mean, I remember even hearing that some people around Silva, around October, November, were advising, well, maybe you should give it a full season at a club just to show you can build. Because if you jump ship too readily like that, then, who will want to invest in you?
Because obviously after that, if you do well at Everton, then potential speculation of going to a bigger club, and then they're like, oh, well, can we trust that? And that's what happens.
Gary Ward on Twitter says clubs are never going to progress if you keep sacking your manager when times get a little bit challenging. #Watford. And James says Marco Silva was so good that he managed to push the board's expectations of him far enough that suddenly being in the top 10 wasn't good enough. Shocking decision. Do managers think like that, Michael Appleton? Do they think, oh, hold on, I couldn't get my move to Watford, I'm going to sulk, I'm going to, not going to put it in as much? Is that a mentality that you've come across?
Absolutely not. No, it's crazy to even think or suggest. I think that, the Premier League's a difficult place, and it's a difficult place to manage. There's no doubt about that. As an assistant now, I see the pressures that is put on the managers these days, the expectations to get results. You look at the Premier League as it is at the minute. You could argue that there's 3 leagues, but there's probably 2 leagues. There's obviously the top 6, and then there's the other 14 teams fighting it out to make sure they try and keep their Premiership status. And I don't think you've got time to sulk and feel sorry for yourself in the Premier League. It is cutthroat, and like I say, I suppose the only thing that has happened is that he's paid the cost for not winning enough games over a period of time rather than a short period of time.
And Jolyon, we've mentioned that Watford could get sucked into this now because it is so tight down, well, not the bottom of the table, from sort of 10th, isn't it, to 20th. But if you're a manager, if you're sort of thinking, would I go there? Why would I go to Watford if there's so much change?
Well, I think as a manager, you're going to back yourself and back that you have the ability to get them out of that. Roy Hodgson obviously seen that and felt that with Crystal Palace, and he's done that so far this season. So I'm sure there's managers out there that are confident enough to get Watford out of trouble.
Let's move on, and we'll talk about Alexis Sanchez now, because as first reported last night by David Ornstein from the BBC, Henrik Mkhitaryan is part of this swap deal with Alexis Sanchez. Straight swap, medicals, Miguel, happening today and tomorrow. Who's getting the best deal out of this?
I'd say United, because obviously they're bringing in a player that everyone seems to want, and secondly, they're getting rid of a player that obviously it just wasn't working with Mourinho. But I don't think that Arsenal necessarily got a bad deal in the circumstances, because I mean they were in a difficult situation with Sanchez. All right, he's a brilliant player, but clearly they weren't getting the best out of him this season because of everything happening, and he was going to go for free. And they've got what looks like, I think, a player that could be quite suited to Wenger, and someone now will have something to prove. He's got a lot of talent, as it seems to do, and just because it didn't work at United doesn't mean it won't at Arsenal. Yeah,
technically very good. Played at the highest level majority of his career, so they're getting a very good player in Mkhitaryan, and hopefully he does well.
I think when you look at Arsenal as well, most of their best work is done in and around the opposition's box. There's a lot of given goals, 1-2s. And I think probably the best work we've probably seen from Mkhitaryan at United was in those areas. And Wenger's probably thought, at the end of the day, if we can get the best out of him in what he does best in the team that they've got, with the amount of talent they've got, like I say, it could be a good fit for both clubs.
But you always hear that kind of Mourinho puts defensive demands on players like that, whereas Wenger doesn't. Would you think that would?
Yeah, definitely. I think Wenger's known for putting his arm around players probably a little bit too much and making them feel loved, and Mourinho's a little bit harsher as a critique, but I'm sure he's going to go there and benefit from this.
And Miguel, the stall in this deal, because it has moved quickly, but at the same time it stalled over the last few days. And I was reading online your piece for The Independent about Mino Raiola, the agent, who has a huge say in this deal, both for Sanchez going and Mkhitaryan leaving.
Yeah, well, in the last 2 years, he was already, I suppose, quite well known, but he's made himself one of football's biggest movers in the last year through being involved in some of the biggest transfers, Pogba's, and now this, and Mkhitaryan's to United as well. I mean, I'd heard actually the principles of the Sanchez and United deal were all agreed on Wednesday night, but the issue was basically the other side of it, and then how the whole deal would be constructed. But one of them was whether Arsenal would be able to meet Mkhitaryan's wages, and also there's the issue that because he hadn't really settled at United, he preferred to return to Dortmund where he'd done so well. And when, I suppose, a client has that position, an agent like Raiola, I mean, his whole view is we're not compromising. I think he came out, he was on the record on Wednesday to Paul Hurst in the Times. Henrik will do it when he's ready, and that's his whole position. And I think a lot of this stall, I mean, I remember hearing on Wednesday that it could be organised by Thursday, except for the fact that Raiola's involved. I think that's why we won't see it till Monday. And to be fair, he's getting the deal for his clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you let agents have that much say in your life, in your career? I mean, would
you can do.
If Pep is saying to him, and I know the City stuff has gone, but if Pep was saying, "Oh, we wanted him, but we're not going to pay the money," do you really sort of? There must be times you think, well, what's my agent doing here?
Well, obviously, he's made the decision. His agent hasn't made the decision to go to Arsenal or to Man United. In terms of Mkhitaryan, his agent works for him. He doesn't work for Manchester United or Arsenal, so he needs to get the best for his player and his client. So, as I said, both players were negotiating on free contracts, so there's going to be some details in there that need to be ironed out.
Yeah, where does he fit into this Manchester United side?
Interesting,
That's where you started out.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Still a big fan, to be fair, and it'll be interesting to see who makes way for him. I mean, I suppose as a British coach, an English player, you know, the amount of time that Lingard especially is having in the team at the minute, and obviously the exciting Marcus Rashford that's just behind him.
So worrying from England point of view.
It is, yeah, and that's what worries me a little bit. You know, we've had these players come through over the last 12, 18 months that have excited everyone. Obviously, you know, Marcus going into the England setup as well and setting the international scene alight. That would be a little bit worry sort of from the Englishman. But if you're a Manchester United fan, it's very exciting.
It's a no-brainer.
Absolute no-brainer. You're getting one of the most exciting players in the Premier League, and to go with that. You know, the work rate that you've just been talking about, he's got fantastic work rate, and he is a team player.
To be fair, yesterday I was at Burnley for the United win, and Mourinho said after the game that with Zlatan, who's kind of been injured, maybe not fully fit in the way he was before what happened to him last season, he argued that he only has kind of 4 players for 3 positions up front. So, and he did want to kind of sign a winger and a striker anyway. So, and with all the games they've got, it mightn't be too damaging for Rashford in that way, I suppose, because rotation, but ultimately he might not be the main starter as he was.
Yeah. You've been getting in touch. David O'Dwyer says not only was Alexis running down his contract, but his attitude has been stinking at the club since the Bayern games. Imagine if he'd been forced to stay, so it could have been worse for Arsenal fans. Stephen says what a terrible deal for both clubs and both players who are ending up at clubs they didn't want to join in the first place. Sums up all that is wrong in the modern game. And Damien says United getting a player who is easily worth £100 million, in brackets if Coutinho was worth £140 million, just because of age. Sanchez is better, and swapping for a player that have struggled to get for £40 million. Great deal for Manchester United. In terms of Arsenal, they didn't struggle, did they, without Alexis Sanchez yesterday? 4 goals in 22 minutes against Crystal Palace. And there is a lot of chat about Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Where is that one sitting, Miguel, at the moment, with Arsenal getting him in? Arsene Wenger last night was asked about him. He said, I don't want to talk about that one, and sort of commented on Mkhitaryan more than Aubameyang. Yeah,
he was a bit coy on it. From what I've heard, basically because of a lot of the disciplinary issues that Aubameyang has had at Dortmund, which, to be fair, I mean, it's actually pretty worse than Sanchez's situation at Arsenal in that regard. But they eventually want to do business, so I can see that happening before the end of the window. Although I'm not sure it's as far along as maybe as some of the impressions I've given. But I actually thought yesterday it was a very, very Arsenal, that win, in the sense that you always get the sense over the last 5 or 6 years with them that every time they're about to, you know, when it looks like things are going really well and they're about to make a jump to go to the next level, they lose a big game and have some sort of calamity. But then every time it's about to get really, really bad, they then get a win like that. There's a weird kind of self-correcting.
That result didn't surprise me yesterday.
Yeah.
It kind of was aware.
The result didn't surprise me, but what it did is the manner of the result.
Yeah.
You look at the 2 of the goals, you know, from the corners. I mean, I was quite shocked, especially. And Roy will be disappointed. Obviously, I worked with Roy at my days at West Brom, and you know, his attention to detail is as good as anybody's in the game. There's no doubt about that. And you know, for them to score 2 goals from corners as they did yesterday, that's probably the only surprise. That, you know, 2 of the goals come from set plays.
You were nodding along there as well when you sort of agreed.
Yeah, as I said, you're surprised. But in going back to the Pierre situation, the thing is with that, there must be some off-the-field issues, because a player of that quality in today's market is worth more than 55 million. Yeah. So if there's only them numbers being talking about, I know it's a lot of money, but the market is like outrageous at the moment. So you would expect him to touch near to 100 million.
I mean, you know, and Mkhitaryan played in that team didn't he, at Dortmund? We've seen how great Aubameyang on his day at Dortmund. He's some player.
But true, especially remember watching them against Spurs in Europa League in 2015-16. And the build-up to that game was all about, you know, 2 rising teams, especially, you know, it was just before Spurs' first title challenge under Poch, and Dortmund were absolutely brilliant, and the 2 of them linked up superbly. It's the player, really, the Mkhitaryan player we haven't seen at United enough, apart from ironically maybe 1 game against Spurs last season. But yeah, if Wenger can bring that out, and I do think I mean, you touched on it earlier, kind of where Mourinho has the harder edge, whereas one of the issues that at Arsenal maybe is that Wenger kind of indulges players too much. But maybe these are two players that actually need that.
Yeah.
So, Joleon Lescott, that's the voice of Miguel Delaney if you're listening on 5 Live. Michael Appleton, a Leicester assistant manager with us as well in the studios. Joleon Lescott. And Joleon, if Arsenal do end up getting Aubameyang, and it is a big if, that one, but, they end up with Mkhitaryan and Aubameyang and they've got rid of Sanchez and ended that saga.
Yeah.
They've come out of this pretty well, haven't they?
Yeah, that's good business from Arsenal's point of view. If you look at it and say, well, they've spent potentially 55 million and got 2 players that have played at the highest level. So that, for me, that's good business.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you look at the league that he's coming from as well. I think it's quite important. The German league, it's probably the closest out of the European leagues to the Premier League in terms of the physicality side of it. So he's used to that robust style that we see sometimes in the Premier League, with the defenders. So I agree with Joleon. I think it's good business all round. And I think it's one of them where I think Mourinho and Wenger, I think as soon as it's done and dusted and out of the way, everyone can get on with their lives and we can, move on to other stuff.
It's been going on for journalists. I try to chase this story. But the other side of it as well, in terms of Arsenal, I mean, I was looking at that squad they put out against Bournemouth last week, and is this actually the kind of most mediocre Arsenal squad since in Wenger's time with the club? So to get these 2 players, even if they've had a few difficulties, it just immediately adds that extra gloss.
Yeah, well, one player that Manchester City wanted was Alexis Sanchez. The bid didn't work out in the summer. They haven't got him in January. They seemed to cope all right with him yesterday. Then they've got a man called Sergio Aguero, who Joleon Lescott knows very well. A hat-trick, his 11th hat-trick for Manchester City as they beat Newcastle 3-1. Can you believe... I know last time you were on Match of the Day 2 Extra, I think I asked you a similar question, but can you believe that there is even some sort of chat that he might go at the end of the season?
Yeah, for me, he's one of the best strikers in the Premier League's history. And yeah, as a City fan affiliated with the club, I would have liked to have seen a player of Sanchez's quality come, but if it's at the expense of Sergio Aguero, I'm glad he's not come.
So why, Joleon, is there... Do you think it must be a personality clash then between Guardiola and him? If there's any sort of talk, it can't be the questioning the player, can it?
Not in his performances, because he scores goals regular. And in terms of personality, it may be that, but knowing Sergio Aguero like that, I doubt that is the case. Obviously, managers have ideas how they want to play and who they see in their position. So maybe Sergio just doesn't fit the criteria that Pep has for his team.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd say. I mean, Pep obviously wants these forwards to lead the line in terms of defending from the front and pressing from the front. And I mean, we have touched on it a little bit off air, but maybe with Aguero, it sometimes feels like he's one of these strikers who conserves his energy to be, absolutely deadly when an opportunity arises. Yeah. But the other side of it is that since Guardiola's been at the club, there's always been kind of these moments where it looks like it's, all these rumours and speculation comes out about Aguero's future, and they put in such an effort to try and kill it, but it never quite goes away and always bubbles up again, and it just fosters this impression. Yeah,
because even yesterday I've seen reports of Pep's interview after and say there's no words to describe Sergio. Just say he's brilliant, or say something more, so it just convinces everyone. It's like you don't want to say what we all know and we all feel about Sergio.
So go on, what is it? No one else is listening, it's just me and you on the chat. What's he like? He's a good lad, is he?
Oh, he's a great lad.
He's very easy to get on with.
Yeah, of course he is.
You've never had any issues, never known of any issues?
Has anyone, has anyone had any issues with Sergio? Even
I'm just trying to get, I don't get it, I don't understand it.
He was the only one.
Yeah, even the incident when he was in Holland kind of and involved in the car incident, but it wasn't a negative story. There was nothing negative about Sergio Aguero. No. He's a professional, he loves his craft and he loves to score goals, and that's what he does pretty much every week.
I think you look at Manchester City and a lot of the goals they score throughout the season in most weeks against most teams, they're almost like the perfect goal. They're almost like five-a-side goals, getting to the byline, second 6-yard box, penalty spot, pull it back, bang, goal. But what he has got and what you've got with Aguero is, if a game's tight and they can't get them goals and they can't get in behind teams, he scores any type of goal.
Yeah.
And he scores goals from areas and parts of the pitch that...
So, Michael, you said all that. So, educate me, someone who's just watching football. When I see Sergio Aguero, I see him do all of that. What more does Guardiola want from him if he's already transitioned him into everything that he...
Maybe he doesn't want more.
Barcelona.
Maybe he doesn't want more. Maybe this is his way of motivating him.
Right. Yeah.
There's different ways of motivating players, and it's clearly working at the minute.
Aguero's kind of, around 30. and he's kind of played on that kind of instinct, you'd almost say, in terms of scoring. Can you re-educate a player at that late in their career, you reckon, as a coach?
I think you can. I think there's no doubt about it. Younger players, they probably learn quicker in terms of whether it's technical work that you're doing, but in terms of educating sort of older players in terms of styles and areas that you're wanting to get into, their own experience will pick up on that very, very quickly with a group of intelligent players. So I don't think you can ever stop learning. It's the same with coaches, managers, and certainly with players. And you'd like to think, and we see it year in, year out, week in, week out in the Premier League anyway, a lot of the time, once you get to that 28, 29, that's when you really come into your own anyway. So he's in the prime of his career, really. But I think, for me, some things happen for a reason. Yeah. And sometimes you get that little bit of luck down the line, and him staying and possibility of Sanchez not going to the club could end up work out quite well for him.
Yeah, City fans have been getting in touch as well. John on Facebook says Aguero is one of the best in the Premier League, the best that the Premier League's ever seen, impossible to dispute. And John Wilde on Twitter says he's in the top 5 worldwide, wonderful to watch. If you're a Newcastle fan watching this morning, this afternoon, more frustration, isn't there, for Newcastle fans? That Amanda Staveley takeover deal looks dead in the water, or does it? We keep hearing different things every day. This is Alan Shearer talking on Match of the Day last night. Have a listen to this.
The reason I think Newcastle fans want change, and most of them want change, is that they're not getting value for money, and this is the reason why. Every club in the Premier League over the last 2 or 3 years has broken their transfer record. Newcastle's transfer record, 2005, was Michael Owen, £16 million. Another reason, 9 of the players that played today were in the Championship last season. The other 2, Manquillo, were at Sunderland, and Joselu with Stoke. That's the reason why Newcastle fans want a change of owner.
You were nodding along to something there. I mean, you can understand the Newcastle fans' frustration that this has gone on again. And this is, at the end of another window where they're not going to get the quality that they need to get in and potentially be down in the Championship again.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost the size of the club and the amount of interest that we all have with that football club, even if you're not associated with it. It is a hotbed part of the country, and it's probably a little bit different to most clubs in terms of how compact it is, and you walk into the city and that's the only thing that people talk about, the football. I was shocked last night when I was watching Match of the Day. And I saw those figures what Alan was talking about, that their record signing 60 million. Honestly, I was astonished for a club that big. So I can understand certain frustrations.
But even before that, Alan Shearer was 15 million, and that was 9 years before that. So it wasn't like it was 4 million to 15. It was still kind of moderate figures considering the way the market's gone over the last 10 years. And
the way they spend money actually kind of puts a real figure on this feeling that they're kind of just treading water a little bit. I think that's a great frustration with Newcastle. Is that it's not. I mean, I suppose for any supporter or anyone involved in the club, the great thing about football is the hope, the idea that you can do more, that something else is going to happen. But with Newcastle, it just feels like there's just always this ceiling there. Yeah, and you can sense it with Benitez.
Maybe because it's a businessman running the club. He doesn't have that much affiliation with Newcastle in his heart, so that's probably the reason why he's running it more so as a business.
And devil's advocate, it's his business. He does what he likes with it. It's his money. I know Newcastle fans won't like the sound of that, but let me bring you a bit of breaking news. Actually, Miguel, I'm going to put you on the spot and see what you can tell us about this guy. But Javi Gracia, we're hearing, is expected to be the new Watford manager, formerly of Malaga and most recently of Ruben Kazan. Can you tell us any more about
the latest in a kind of? One thing about Spain is, I remember talking to someone, an executive at a Premier League club recently, is that why they still like young players from Spain and Germany rather than England is because how good the coaching is. And Gracia is basically the latest in that. I mean, Malaga have they've had their own issues in the last few years. He's kind of helped stabilise the club. I'm being here. I'm not too au fait with him, but it fits a profile of Watford. Yeah.
What we're also hearing, actually just getting, Michael Appleton is set to be his... We'll do that to you live on BBC Two. Let's move on and talk about Stoke, and who beat Huddersfield, of course. Paul Lambert's first game in charge. Huge, the new manager effect, isn't it? Really interesting to see that on Match of the Day, they mentioned it last night, that the sprint stats higher than they have been all season under Mark Hughes from the Stoke players. That must infuriate Mark Hughes, but delight Lambert, who's off to a fantastic start.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I watched the show last night, and even though the sprint stats were higher, it was only marginally. So it does, but it was very marginally. So
sensationalising.
Yeah, I won't read too much into that. I mean, no. At the end of the day, there's always going to be effects when a new manager comes in. There's no doubt about that. And they have got good footballers. Yesterday, they're 3 or 4 top performers. They performed on the day, and it looked from the highlights and what we've seen, there was only going to be one winner. And the fact that obviously, Paul came in, only had 3 or 4 days working with him, he'll take the plaudits, and rightly so. But it'll be interesting to see, how that develops over the coming weeks.
That's because the key. I think anyone can do it for one game, and that's probably been the criticism of Stoke, is that their top performers do it once a month, say, potentially. It's just keeping them motivated for a long period of time, and no disrespect, but the fixture did help them. Obviously away from home, Huddersfield not that strong.
Do you think they could be dragged into it, Stoke, then? Even after this good start on the Lambert?
Possibly. I don't think anyone outside the top 6 feels they're not vulnerable to dropping in the league.
I did a piece on this on Wednesday for Independent, but it's actually amazing what's happened in that mid-table obscurity has essentially been obliterated. It doesn't exist anymore because, I mean, usually we saw it, say, with Stoke in 2008 or clubs like Swansea, in that they got into the league, got into the Premier League, consolidated. Then they had a few years where they kind of sit around 8th to 13th, 14th, and kind of try a few things, get used to the league. But that doesn't happen anymore, because now the minute that basically you slip a little, suddenly you're in trouble. It's so close in that bottom half.
And it's a funny old world, isn't it, football? Because Paul Lambert was with me in the 5 Live studio about 10 days ago when Mark Hughes put all his eggs in that Newcastle basket, lost the game at the Bet365, and I was like, Paul, there you are, you're in there. And he said, I'm never going to manage in the Premier League again. He's comfortable with me saying that. He didn't expect to get a Premier League job, and there he is.
Yeah, I mean, and he's going to be looking to take his opportunity. He's going to be thankful for the opportunity. He come out and said, there was a lot being said that he was 15th choice or whatever it may be, and he probably come out and said he doesn't care if he was 50th choice. He's been given an opportunity. He's got the experience. He's managed in the Premier League before. And just going back onto the point that the lads were making about obviously how tight it is, that was the reason why I mentioned, the Premier League, it's almost become like a 2-league league, And you look at last season, and it was the boss. It was Claude's side at Southampton. I think finished 7th or 8th on 46 points. And I think it was Watford who was 17th on 40 points. So there was 6 points between 10, 11 teams. From right up there near the top of the league to finishing 17th.
Yeah, well, on that subject, your Leicester side beating Watford yesterday, as we mentioned at the top, by 2-0, which puts you up to 7th, or top of the other table, as Gary Lineker said on Match of the Day last night. What has Claude Puel done, along with you, to have this transition, this instant impact there?
Listen, I think there's no doubt about it. We've got 3 or 4 of the lads in the side at the minute who are on, that are on top form, the top of the game. It was highlighted over the last couple of weeks of how well Riyad Mahrez has been playing, and obviously Vaz has come into his own. But there's a little bit of speculation around Harry and Manchester City, and they're all positive things for Leicester City. So we've got the players who are in good spirits and they're doing their business. I think what the boss has done is, I think previously, over the last 3 or 4 years, we've gone into Jamie a lot quicker, and probably sometimes too quick at times, and
too predictable.
Possibly, but we've been effective. So as a club, it's been very effective. Exactly. So don't get carried away with that. But what he has tried to instill into the players is that on the transition, on the turnover, if it's not on to do it in one, it might be 3 or 4 passes before we release some of the quicker players in the team to try and get in behind teams and counter.
What's he like as a guy then, Puel? He seems a thinker to me. He seems, what's he like to work with? Different to you as a manager and your style, or?
Yeah, probably. I mean, obviously the fact that he's French and I'm English, and we've got to communicate and
you meet in the middle somewhere. Do you?
Yeah, well, he's I'd say very calm, calculated. But he's a winner, and you can tell that on a Saturday or a Tuesday on the side of the pitch. He's very passionate. He knows what he wants from the players, and if he doesn't get it, he certainly makes them aware of it.
Is he stern? Is he? Because even when we deal with him from a media perspective, he just seems quite quiet and really kind of relaxed. Sometimes it's hard to imagine him suddenly going anyway furious or.
Yeah, well, I think you find that with quite a lot of managers, and there's this, image that certain managers have because they're in the front of the camera, they're out there in front of 40, 50,000 people and they're trying to keep themselves in check, because the reality is, if you're losing your emotions too much, you're not actually watching what's going on the field. You know, you're not watching if the opposition have changed formation, if certain players are affecting the game more than you thought they would be before the game. So you need that, and he's obviously good at that, but also behind that, I think most managers, most people who go into the game as a manager have got that bite, and when they need it, you know, they bring it out.
There were a lot of Leicester fans, weren't there? And I don't know whether you guys sort of listen to the likes of 606 when you're driving home and shows like that, but there were a lot of Leicester fans coming on saying, what, Claude Puel, why we ended up, you know, because of what had happened at Southampton. This guy did an incredible job at Nice, and look what he's done with you guys in a short space of time there, and he's, you know, he deserves more credit, doesn't he?
Yeah, and again, I think he'd be the first to say, because you know, we spoke about it after the game yesterday. You know, there was people talking, oh, you know, you've gone up to 7th, and he was the first very, very quickly. Is that, yeah, that's okay now, but as long as we're 7th after 38 games, and he's very good at sort of keeping things under wraps a little bit, you know. And the reason I say that is obviously, you know, the Marco Silva stuff. You know, you can do well over a short period of time, but ultimately the season is 38 games, and you'll get judged, hopefully. The idea as a manager is to get judged after 38 games.
But his own personal experience must play a part in that. He finished, 7th for Southampton, got to the cup final, potentially should have won that game, and then ended up leaving the club. So I'm sure he's aware that let's not get carried away and let's just be understated and go along about business.
Southampton were a bit harsh on him, I thought. I mean, it's almost like they punished him for what does happen to a lot of mid-table clubs when kind of the season starts, when there's kind of nothing you can go for either above or below, or there's no threat from below, that just it peters out a little bit, naturally. Just
quickly, I just want to ask you, Riyad Mahrez, there's lots of speculation. If Michael Appleton's putting his mortgage on the line, is he going to be there in February?
Wow, I won't gamble with my mortgage or anything. Listen, I expect him to be at the football club on the 1st of Feb. I think
you can see why everyone wants him.
The boss has come out and said that, you know, he'll be here on the 1st of Feb, and that's good enough for me. And he's in a really good place, like I say. He's in fantastic form, and he's in a dressing room, and it's really important. He's in a dressing room that is a fantastic dressing room with really good lads, and he's a big part of it.
Really emotional scenes at Goodison Park yesterday, and across the Premier League. A minute's applause, black armbands. Of course, we lost Cyril Regis. Joleon, I know, you know, you in particular, Midlands lad, black Midlands lad growing up, poignant for you.
Yeah, of course. I think Cyril was an icon in football, let alone West Brom's history. But yeah, being from Birmingham, everyone's made aware of how important it was to the city, and it was just a shame to see him go, obviously. And I know him personally. I know, obviously, Mike worked with Jason, his nephew, and I used to clean Jason's boots at Wolves, so he couldn't talk any more highly of Cyril.
And he was a pioneer, isn't he, for black players in the Premier League? Not particularly of your era, but more so of Jason's era. You know,
yeah, of course. As you said, he kind of broke barriers, made a lot of differences for black players coming through after him, and paved the way. And as I said, he should be regarded as. But not only that, he was a top player. He didn't just play in an era where black players weren't allowed to play. He performed at the highest level under severe circumstances. So let's remember that the impact he had on the pitch as well. Yeah,
I mean, even he was just slightly before my era in terms of kind of when I started watching football. I kind of caught the tail end of it when he was at Villa. But even watching Match of the Day last night, and kind of some of the clips or some of the footage that's been shown, you see someone that to a degree looks kind of a little bit of ahead of his time, and kind of the force of his play, and the kind of, you know, the movement, the range of it as well.
Finally, from that game, James McCarthy. I mean, he's been struggling with injuries. He's come back. A double fracture. It was horrible, wasn't it? It was freak, but horrible, Michael, for James.
Yeah, and I feel for James. I mean, like you said, he's been out injured for so long already this season, and for something like that to happen, you know, you just don't wish it on any player. You know, I've been injured myself. It's cost my career. You know, back in the day. You know, Rondon. You know, I felt for Rondon as well yesterday. He was in bits because it was completely accidental. But from what I hear and what the little bit I do know about James, he's a strong character and he's mentally strong, and he's going to need to be. And he's at a fantastic football club with good people. I'm sure they'll get him back and playing very, very soon.
We've got 5. Go on.
Such a pity. I mean, I think I saw a stat. It's the first, and I'm obviously interested from an Irish perspective, but it's the first time he's played 5 consecutive games for Everton in what was it, 2 or 3 years? Because it's been such a stuttering time for him. But it's such a pity because, as well as that, it looked like, I mean, one of the big criticisms of his career is that he maybe, given his talent, he doesn't impose himself on games, whereas he seemed to be doing that under Allardyce.
Yeah, I think he came on in the game and Allardyce picked him out after the game and said that's what we wanted someone to do, go in there and make tackles, and that's what he's been doing.
Yeah.
We've got 4 or 5 minutes left. I want to talk about, obviously, Tottenham playing Southampton, a 4 o'clock kickoff, which will keep you up to date on 5 Live with updates from Wembley. In terms of... Sorry, St Mary's, isn't it, tonight, this afternoon? Let's look at this on the back of the Times. Spurs fight Real over world record bid for Harry Kane. We've heard a lot of this, Miguel, haven't we, over the last few months? But the Spanish club ready to offer £200 million. New Kane deal, key to keeping Tottenham stance. Pochettino could also be a target for Euro giants. What's your take on all of this Kane story?
I think Spurs have been quick out to kind of maybe deny that they've received interest on him, but I think there's no doubt that Real Madrid have been looking at him. And actually, Real Madrid have a bit of an issue there because their main stars now are getting... We've seen Ronaldo speculation over the last week. They're getting kind of to the tail end of their careers. Perez is now... I mean, they've had a bad season in terms of results, even if they won the Champions League last year. So that's brought Zidane under pressure, which is going to, in turn, more importantly, bring the president Perez under pressure. So he's going to want a big signing or a big statement in the summer, particularly if they don't win anything. But then they have another issue because of all these players like Ronaldo and Benzema on such high wages, and at the moment I think this is the case for both of the Spanish clubs, both of the big Spanish clubs, Real and Barca. Their cash flow isn't as strong as England or obviously PSG. So I'd actually wonder whether they'd be able to raise the fees to extract a player like Kane from Spurs, to make the sort of offer that Levy, as a businessman, would consider.
I don't believe this due to the figure. Daniel Levy's not selling Harry Kane for 200 million. No way.
More like 400 million.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot more than anyone's ever been sold for before in the past. And I do feel Real Madrid potentially do need to reinvest in the younger players, but to get Harry Kane is going to cost a lot of money.
But that's the thing with Real as well. Like, over the last 2 years, they've actually changed strategy. Obviously, we knew they went the whole Galactico thing for a few years. But because of that, and because of kind of the influx of money from broadcasting in England and what's happening at PSG, they changed strategy to specifically go for players, to sign the next generation of players, like the best 20 to 24-year-olds like Asensio and Kane. All right, he's kind of just coming out of that age bracket, but it still will be a player for the future.
I Hip here on Twitter says seems to be a bit cheap for him, talking about Harry Kane. John Smith on Twitter says, why would Harry Kane stay if a big club calls? And Mark Dean on Twitter, buying his boots only for that price. 10 games without a win quickly, Michael, for Southampton. They're in the bottom 3, just briefly, starting this day. Worrying for them and Pellegrino.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a tough time for them, there's no doubt about it. I think last week at Watford, 2 up at half-time, you probably expect them to go on and obviously win the game. It didn't happen for them. Big game today. I would imagine that, certainly with being the home team, they're going to have to get after Tottenham. There's no point sort of sitting back and try and let them dictate the game.
Yeah, I mean, given what happened over Christmas as well, you'd expect where Kane absolutely destroyed. He expects Southampton to sit back a bit, but Spurs win today.
Eased it all, doesn't it? Well, thank you so much, Miguel, for joining us. Michael, as well, best of luck for the season with the rest of the season with Leicester. And Jolien, we'll see you again soon, I am sure. But that is it for now. Don't forget, highlights on Match of the Day 2 tonight. Mark Chapman is going to be live at St Mary's.